ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שהכל נהיה בדברו. I have spoken about this in the past, and I've told you many a time, the source of all my readings usually goes back to the Bible always. It goes back to the Torah, somehow. I read many things. I read all sorts of publications, believe me. I read newspapers, I listen to television. But somehow, I always go back to the Torah. And one of the difficulties in the Torah is the following. We've spoken about it in the past. God sends 10 plagues upon Egypt in order to convince Pharaoh to let the Jewish people go. Let them out of Egypt, out of slavery. But then the Torah says something very strange. God hardens the heart of Pharaoh, so he should not let the Hebrews out of Egypt. Why does God interfere with Pharaoh? Why doesn't God let him do what he wants to do? This is, after all, the basic idea of being a human being responsible. There would be no punishment, no reward, if we wouldn't have free will. Why does God interfere with the free will of Pharaoh? The Torah says the following. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof. You have to run after justice. But the means have to be just also. In other words, you can't just go justice at the end. Everything has to be right. So why does God interfere with Pharaoh's will? Pharaoh doesn't want to let the Jews out. He wants to let them out. Why does he harden his heart? Well, we have to think about what was the purpose of the plagues. I think that the purpose of the plagues was twofold. Number one, to show the Egyptians who is really God. They had all sorts of idols that they worshipped. Even Pharaoh himself thought he was God. Here comes somebody that is more powerful than him. He can do everything. His magicians do everything. But at the end of the day, it's God who rules this world. And I think it was also very important for the Jewish people, the Hebrews that were there, that they should know that their God is really the all-powerful God in this world. They had been living already in Egypt in slavery for 210 years. Even though they retained their language and what have you, of course they assimilated part of the Egyptian culture. As a matter of fact, we mentioned it many a time, only 1/5, 20% of the Jewish people, of the Hebrews, left Egypt. This is what our rabbis say. 4/5, 80% remained. They were assimilated. They wanted to stay in Egypt, So it was very important that God demonstrate for them who is the real God in this world. But yet we remain with a basic problem. Why does God harden the heart of Pharaoh? It's not right. Let Pharaoh do what he wants. Don't interfere with his free will. There's an interpreter of the Chumash that I read recently. I read him before, but it never caught my attention. His name is Sforno. He says the following. Actually, by hardening Pharaoh's heart, what God was doing is giving him freedom of choice. Because if you react because of the plagues, you're not doing what you really want. You're reacting because there's a stimulus, something is happening, there's something terrible is going to happen to you. That's why you do it, but not because you want. Who was this Pharaoh? The Torah says that one day he sits with his cabinet. Who was his cabinet? According to our rabbis, he had Bilam, who was a prophet of the Gentiles, Job, who was a very strange figure, and Jethro, Yisro, the father-in-law of Moses, who was a big bishop, a big religious leader then. They were his advisors. And he says, there's a people here, they're becoming too many. We have to make sure that they don't reproduce because they may tomorrow try to escape. If there's war, who knows what they're going to do. So they decide, what? We're going to have every Jewish boy, the moment he's born, killed. Now, is that a nice guy who comes with such a solution? This Pharaoh was not an independent human being that was open to discussion, a moral human being, even though he didn't believe in God. He was cruel. When that didn't work, he said, you know what? We have to throw every male into the river. Our rabbis say even the Egyptian males, because they were afraid, their astrologers had told them that the savior of the Jewish people is about to be born. So they didn't know if he was going to be a Hebrew or an Egyptian. So they said, well, throw every child into the river. Who does that? You know, God didn't have to harden Pharaoh's heart. His heart was rotten to begin with. What God did, he did not want that the plagues should influence what Pharaoh really wanted to do. You know, so he hardened his heart so that do what you really want to do. The best proof of it is, once the plagues cease, immediately he runs after the Jewish people that left Egypt. He threw them out, but the following day he's sorry for what he did, and he runs after them. So actually, you let Pharaoh do what he really wanted by hardening his heart, because he was an evil individual. He was really a murderer of children. That's who Pharaoh was. Many a time, you know, in our own family life, events happen